December 1939, a record-setting 38 different titles on the newsstands. This was an increase of 5 from just the month before, making this the highest number of the 30s in the very last month of the 1930s. Fantastic Comics number 1, December 1939, published by Fox Comics. This key issue features the first appearance of Samson, a character who would later earn his own book, and the first appearance of Stardust, who assassinated wrongdoers regularly. This issue went on sale October 5th, 1939. The editor at Fox was Victor Fox. There is a Billy Wright pedigree copy of this book, as well as a Lamont Larson pedigree copy. Lou Fine is the cover artist featuring the hero Samson in this early superhero comic book cover. And The Coming of Samson is the title of the 13-page Samson strip, possibly written by Will Eisner. Art is by Alex Bloom in this early superhero strip featuring Samson, and the story would be reprinted in Samson number 1 in 1940. In the Land of Nod is the title of the 2-page Buzzy strip written and drawn by Jerry Iger, and this is the only appearance of this strip. The Arrival of Stardust is the title of the 6-page Stardust strip, written and drawn by Fletcher Hanks. It's an early fantasy supernatural story and features the first appearance of Stardust. Origin of the Golden Knight is the title of the 8-page Golden Knight strip, drawn by Grieg Chappian. It's a fantasy supernatural story featuring the first appearance and origin of Sir Richard of Warwick as the Golden Knight. Captured by Skoma is the title of the 6-page Space Smith strip, written and drawn by Fletcher Hanks under the alias Hank Christie. It's a science fiction comic strip featuring the first appearances of Skoma and Space Smith. The Planet of Death is a 2-page text story written by William Libby, and it's a sci-fi story. The USA Invaded is the title of a 6-page Yank Wilson strip, written and drawn by Jack Farr. It's an early war genre comic, and it features the first appearances of Yank Wilson, the President, the villain Raxola, and the Eskimongolians. Into the Fourth Dimension is the title of the 6-page Flick Falcon strip, drawn by Don Rico. It's another science fiction strip in this issue, featuring the first appearances of Flick Falcon, Adele, and the 3 armed men who happen to be Martians. At the Bottom of the Sea is the title of the 6-page Sub Saunders story, drawn by Henry Kiefer, and it features the first appearances of Sub Saunders, Lieutenant Dirk, Queen Lantida, the Atlanteans, Nolus, and the Frogmen. Flash Comics number 1, Ashcan edition, December 1939, published by DC Comics. In late 1939, DC and new publisher Fawcett, both coveting the catchy title Flash, each raced to get its own Ashcan version printed to secure the copyright of the name. But DC beat Fawcett to the punch. As usual for Ashcans, the content was not new material. The cover is Leo O'Malley's cover art for Adventure Comics number 41, and the interior pages are lifted from All American Comics number 8. The Ashcan is listed in Gerber with a scarcity rating of 10. This book was first offered for sale in 1996 at the Sotheby's auction. Since then, only 3 others have appeared on the CGC census. Overstreet did not even list this edition existing until 2006. The editor at DC was likely Vincent Sullivan. This Ashcan is printed with a black and white cover, full color interior, standard paper, and Ashcan format. The cover by Leo O'Malley, taken from Adventure Comics 41. Silver Street Comics number 1, December 1939, published by Lev Gleason Comics. This is the first comic by the company that would soon be known as Lev Gleason Publications. It has a cool silver metallic ink cover and the first appearance of the Claw, done by Jack Cole. Overstreet lists this book as scarce, and Gerber lists it as uncommon. This is the first comic book by the company that would soon be known as Lev Gleason Publications, but here technically they were called Rhoda Publications with the abbreviation YG for Your Guide. As the publisher of Crime Does Not Pay, Daredevil Comics, and others, the company would go on to be one of the most successful Golden Age publishers. This issue's content came from the shop of artists known as Funnies, Inc., which included Jack Cole and Bill Everett. One thing interesting about this issue is that it has an advertisement for Timely Comics Marvel Mystery Comics #2 on the inside back cover. The connection being that the Timely book was also made by the Funnies Inc. production team. This issue features the first appearance of the Claw, drawn by Jack Cole. Claw was one of the first supervillains in comics. This issue went on sale September 22nd, 1939. The editor was Jack Cole. And he is also the cover artist of the Claw in this early superhero cover. The Claw appears in an 11-page story, likely written by Jack Cole, with art confirmed by Jack Cole, featuring the first appearance of the Claw as well as Jerry Morris and Eloise Pearsall. Jerry Morris and Ambassador Eloise Pearsall happened to stop at Rica on their way to China to aid war victims. This is the home of the Claw, and the Claw needs a woman to aid in his world conquest. This story would be reprinted in Daredevil Comics #21 in 1944. As Time Stops is the title of the 6-page Mr. Midnight story, written possibly by Al Anders, art definitely by Al Anders, and it features Neil Carruthers as Mr. Midnight, and the villain Will-O-Wisp appears. Save on Bullets is a 2-page text story written by Ray Gill with art by Bill Everett. It's a Western frontier story featuring Sheriff John Carteris. The Spy Ring Case is the title of a 6-page Wasp story written and drawn by Arthur Panagian. It's an adventure strip featuring Burton Slade as the Wasp, and this is reprinted from Motion Picture Funnies Weekly #1 earlier in 1939. Introducing the Spirit Man is an 8-page story for Spirit Man, and it features the first appearance of Spirit Malcolm as Spirit Man. And this issue features an ad for Here's Marvel Comics. Top Notch Comics #1, December 1939, published by MLJ Publications. This historic MLJ first issue features the origin and first appearance of the Wizard. Gerber rates this book as scarce. It went on sale officially October 25th, 1939. The editor at this time at MLJ was Louis Silberkleit. There's a Mile High Pedigree copy of this book from the Edgar Church collection, as well as a Lost Valley Pedigree copy. The Wizard is featured on the cover in this early superhero comic book cover, featuring Blaine Whitney as the Wizard with art by Ed Ash. The Pearl Harbor Peril is an 11-page story, The Wizard, with art by Ed Ash. It's an early superhero comic strip featuring the first appearance and origin of Blaine Whitney as the Wizard. And the Wizard uses his superpowers to stop a Jacksonian attack on Pearl Harbor. And this interesting Pearl Harbor story happened a few years before the real attack on Pearl Harbor. In the Worlds of Time is the 6-page story Scott Rand, written by Otto Binder with art by Jack Binder. It's a science fiction comic strip featuring the first appearance of Scott Rand, and also features Thor, a Viking. Joe Louis is featured in Sport Topics, a 1-page strip drawn by Erwin Hazen, and features not only Joe Louis, but also Lou Nova, the 2-ton Galento. The Fortune Teller's Revenge is the title of a 5-page story, Mystic, drawn by Chuck Winter. It's an early superhero comic strip featuring the Mystic, who is a magician who has his first appearance in this strip. Case 1 Master Forgers is the title of a 6-page Manhunter story written and drawn by Jack Cole. It's a crime story which would be reprinted in Punch Comics #10 in 1944. Air Patrol is a 5-page story written by Joe Blair with art by Irv Novick. It's an aviation war story featuring the first appearance and origin of Ben Wings Johnson. This is one of the first American comic books ever to feature German Nazis in the story. Irv Novick, born April 11th, 1916, lived until October 15th, 2004, an American comic book artist who worked continuously from 1939 until the 1990s. He got his start in the workshop of Harry A. Chesler. From 1939 to 46, Novick was working for MLJ Comics, the company later known as Archie Comics. He became the primary artist for their superhero comics, including The Shield, Bob Fantom, The Hangman, Steel Sterling. Eventually, in the 1950s, Novick was primarily artist on DC War comics, such as Our Army at War, and even some romance titles. Kanigher and Novick introduced the Silent Knight character in The Brave and the Bold #1 in 1955, and by 1968, Novick began drawing superhero titles at DC such as Batman, Lois Lane, and The Flash, and he co-created the Joker series in 1975. Best Comics #2, December 1939, published by Better Publications. This issue went on sale October 31st, 1939. The editor at Better Publications at this time was likely Leo Margulies. Dimensions of this book was 12 by 9 inches and was published sideways. The cover features Adventures of the Red Mask, who also has a 6-page story written and drawn by George West in this early superhero comic strip. The Red Mask is the first African or minority hero in comics and is depicted as black-skinned on the cover of the first issue, but depicted as a white-skinned hero on the cover of issue number 2. Happy is a 2-page story written and drawn by Ken Platt, and Happy appears 5 different times in this issue. Blue Ribbon Comics #2, December 1939, published by MLJ Publications. Before Archie came along, MLJ was mainly an action-adventure and superhero publisher. Cover features Orangutan saving a boy from a burning building with Jack Cole art inside. There's a Hawkeye pedigree copy of this book, as well as a Mile High pedigree copy from the Edgar Church collection. This issue went on sale October 20th, 1939. The editors at MLJ at this time were Louis Silberkleit and Harry Chesler. Featuring Orangutan is the cover feature, likely drawn by Ed Ash. And Orangutan appears in a 10-page story written by Norman Danberg, art possibly by Ed Ash as well, featuring the hero Orangutan the dog. Dan Hastings appears in a 5-page story written by Ken Fitch with art by Clem Gretter in this classic early science fiction comic strip. Experiment in Death is the title of the 4-page Dan Hastings text story written by Ken Fitch with art by Clem Gretter. Night Off is a 1-page story written and drawn by Jack Cole. Enter the Marvel is the title of the 6-page Scoop Cody strip drawn by Charles Biro. It's a detective mystery featuring Scoop Cody, newspaperman, and the first appearance of the Marvel. A white-masked individual called the Marvel helps Scoop track down King Carr. The Scourge of the Underworld is the title of a 6-page Bob Fantom strip drawn by Irv Novick. It's an early superhero comic strip featuring Walt Whitney in his first appearance as Bob Fantom. We also get the first appearance of the villains, the Purple Gang. An earlier version of Bob Fantom appeared in Star Comics #1 and Keen Comics #1, but he was not a costumed hero in those early appearances. Corporal Collins is a 5-page story with art by Charles Biro. It's an early war genre comic featuring the first appearance and origin of Jim Collins as Corporal Collins, and the German Nazis make an early appearance in this story. Champion Comics #2, December 1939, published by Harvey Comics. First issue of this title, and it introduces runs by the Champ, the Blazing Scarab, Neptina, and the Liberty Lads. This issue features Henry Kiefer and George Papp art. This issue went on sale October 5th, 1939. There's a Mile High pedigree copy of this book. The editor at Harvey was Worth Carnahan, and Adolphe Barou was the associate editor. The Champ is featured on the cover, and the Champ is featured in a 12-page story with art likely by Adolphe Barou. It's a sports story featuring the first appearance of the Champ. Neptina appears in a 6-page story, likely drawn by Harry Parkhurst. It's an early science fiction comic strip featuring the first appearance of Neptina. The Blazing Scarab is a 6-page story with art by George Papp. It's an adventure, fantasy, supernatural story. Champ of Champs is a 1-page story drawn by George Papp, featuring the character sport figure Jack Dempsey. The Story of the Champ is a 2-page text story written by Dr. Marlin and features the villain's first appearance, Dr. Katsu. Jungle Man appears in a 7-page story, likely drawn by Harry Parkhurst. It's an early jungle genre story and features the first appearance of Jungle Man. Liberty Lads debut in a 6-page story, Origin of the Liberty Lads, drawn by Henry Kiefer. It's a historical adventure strip. Marvel Mystery Comics number 2, December 1939, published by Timely Comics. The second issue of the series that started it all for Timely is rare according to Overstreet and scarcer than the more famous Marvel Comics number 1. Carl Burgos, Bill Everett, and Paul Gustafson render the superheroes with whom they're most often associated: Human Torch, Submariner, and Angel. Claire Moe provides the great cover. There's a Lamont Larson pedigree copy of this book, as well as a Billy Wright pedigree copy. This issue went on sale October 13th, 1939. The editor at Timely was Martin Goodman. The Angel is featured on the cover with art by Charles Mazujian, and it features Tom Holloway as the Angel. There is an advertisement for Silver Streak Comics. Murder at the Racetrack is the title of the 16-page The Human Torch story written and drawn by Carl Burgos in this early superhero comic strip featuring the Human Torch, and his origin is retold in a flashback. We also get Professor Horton and the villain's first appearance, Blackie Ross. The Torch must battle a racketeer who wants his racing car to win so badly that he uses an airplane that fires incendiary bullets into the other cars. The Human Torch still wears his blue uniform. He doesn't adopt the Jim Hammond identity until issue number 4. The Angel appears in an 8-page story written and drawn by Paul Gustafson. This early superhero strip features Tom Holloway as the Angel, as well as the first appearance of Jane Freeman. The Angel saves a woman's life all over a map with a curse on it, as it reveals the location of a treasure connected to the lost temple of Alano. The Submariner appears in a 12-page story written and drawn by Bill Everett. Attack on New York City is the title of the story. It's a superhero strip featuring Prince Namor as the Submariner, also Pinkerton and the policeman Foley. Namor heads for New York City, and while securing a disguise, a young woman accidentally sets her dress ablaze with a cigarette. Deciding that she can be of value to him in his avowed war against the Americans, he kidnaps her from the hospital and takes her to his undersea kingdom. American Ace appears in a 6-page story drawn by Paul Loretta. It's an aviation story featuring the first appearance of Perry Wade as American Ace. And we also get the origin of this character. It's reprinted from Motion Picture Funnies Weekly number 1. Deathbird Squadron is the title of a 2-page The Angel text story written by David Cook with art by Charles Mazujian. This superhero strip features Tom Holloway as the Angel, and it also features the Nazis as villains, and some of them die in the storyline. The Angel takes matters into his own hands against the Nazis, who without warning attacked the Polish town of Grybo. Adventures of Ka-zar the Great is a 12-page story drawn by Ben Thompson. Ka-zar, alias David Rand, appears in this jungle story, which we also get animals such as Zar, the lion, Shah, the lion mate of Zar, and Traja, an elephant. After the death of his parents, Ka-zar goes to live in the cave of his friend Zar, but soon faces Bardak, who has found a mirror in the abandoned tent of De Kraft and refuses to relinquish it. Ka-zar takes it from him, and Bardak swears revenge. Speed Comics number 3, December 1939, published by Brookwood Comics. It features an early Shock Gibson cover with George Tuska art inside. Gerber rates this issue a 7, calling it scarce. The editor at Brookwood was Maurice Rosenfield. Shock Gibson is featured on the cover in this early superhero cover, likely drawn by Norman Fallon. And Shock Gibson appears in a lengthy 22-page story written by Maurice Rosenfield with art likely by Norman Fallon. The early superhero strip features Charles Gibson as Shock and the first appearance of Jim Worth. Biff Bannon of the U.S. Marines is a 6-page story written and drawn by Dick Briefer. Landor, Maker of Monsters, is a 4-page story drawn by Bob Powell. It is a ripoff of the Phantom of the Opera unmasking scene. Spike Marlin is an 8-page story with art by George Tuska. 4-Color Comics, Series 1, Number 3, Myra North Special Nurse, December 1939, published by Dell Comics. This is the 3rd issue of the longest-running American comic book series in history. Myra North, Special Nurse, was written by Ray Thompson and drawn by Charles Cole. The strip was distributed by the Newspaper Enterprise Association, debuting on February 10th, 1936. The entire issue may be composed of reprints from early issues of Crackerjack Funnies. Myra North, Special Nurse, is featured on the cover with art by Charles Cole. And Myra North, Special Nurse is the feature strip throughout the entire issue, which is taken from Sunday newspaper reprints, written by Ray Thompson with art by Charles Cole. Magic Comics number 5, December 1939, published by David McKay Publications. The diverse duo of Henry and Mandrake the Magician headlined the cover and stories. The editor at David McKay at this time was Marjorie McKay. There's a Mile High pedigree copy of this book from the Edgar Church collection, as well as a Crowley pedigree copy. Mandrake the Magician is featured in an 8-page story written by Lee Falk, with art by Phil Davis in this adventure superhero strip. And Popeye appears in a 4-page story written and drawn by Elzie Cigar in its strip reprints. Mystery Men Comics number 5, December 1939, published by Fox Comics. The Green Mask is featured on the cover, drawn by Lou Fine, featuring Michael Shelby as the Green Mask. This issue went on sale October 12, 1939. The editor was likely Victor Fox at Fox Comics. The Will of John D. Livingston is the title of the 9-page The Green Mask story, possibly written by Will Eisner, with art by Walter Frame, featuring Michael Shelby as the Green Mask, and features the first appearance and death of the villain, Jeanette Livingston. The story would be reprinted in The Green Mask number 1 in 1940. The Robot Solar System is the title of the 6-page Rex Dexter strip written and drawn by Dick Briefer. It's an adventure science fiction strip featuring Rex Dexter, plus the first appearance of the villain, who happens to be a robot. Wing Turner is a 3-page story with art by George Tuska under the alias Floyd Kelly, and features the first appearance of Basil Rogers. Mr. Death is the title of the 2-page Mystery Man tech story written and drawn by Will Eisner, featuring the first appearance of Richard Alden as Mystery Man and the first appearance of the villain Mr. Death. A Trap for the Blue Beetle is the title of the 5-page The Blue Beetle story, possibly written by Will Eisner, with art by Charles Nicholas, featuring Dan Garrett as the Blue Beetle and the first appearance of Dr. Franz, and this would be reprinted in Blue Beetle number 1 in 1940. Zanzibar is a 4-page story, likely written by Will Eisner, with art by George Tuska under the alias Floyd Kelly, and features the first appearance of the Walrus Men. The story would be reprinted in The Green Mask number 2 in 1940. Lieutenant Drake is a 5-page story with art by Klaus Nordling. Features Dan Crard in his first appearance, and the story would be reprinted in Blue Beetle number 5 in 1940. Klaus Nordling, born May 29, 1910, lived until November 19, 1986, an American writer, artist for American comic books, best known for his work on the 1940s masked crime fighter feature Lady Luck, and as co-creator of the Marvel Comics superhero The Thin Man. He started at Fox Comics in 1939, working on most of their titles, including Wonderworld and Mystery Men Comics, as well as Speed Comics number 1 from Harvey and Mystic Comics from Timely. In 1942, Nordling began his best-known comics work, Lady Luck, which appeared as a 4-page weekly feature in a Sunday newspaper insert called The Spirit Section. Smash Comics number 5, December 1939, published by Quality Comics. This issue went on sale October 20th, 1939. The editor at Quality was Ed Cronin. Bozo the Robot is featured on the cover with art by Gil Fox. It's an early science fiction comic book cover featuring Bozo the Robot and Hugh Hazard. Also, Wings Wendell, Espionage, The Invisible Hood, and Archie O'Toole are all seen on the inside on the cover. Espionage starring Black Ace is a 9-page strip written and drawn by Will Eisner in his spy story featuring the Black Ace as Espionage. Archie O'Toole appears in 2 pages, likely written and drawn by Will Eisner. It's a humor child story. Tom Bradley Missing is the title of the 5-page Invisible Justice story, written and drawn by Art Panagian under the alias Art Gordon, in a superhero comic strip featuring Kent Thurston as the Invisible Hood. The Doomed Dam is the title of the 4-page Flash Fulton story written and drawn by Paul Gustafson. The Plot to Destroy Bozo is the title of the 7-page Hugh Hazard and His Iron Man story, written and drawn by George Brenner under the alias Wayne Reed. The early science fiction comic strip features Hugh Hazard and Bozo the Robot. Herman Weiser of Latvia offers Hazard $2 million for the robot, and when he refuses even for the sum of $5 million, Weiser tries to destroy Bozo with a death ray machine. Comic Pages, Volume 3, Number 6, December 1939, published by Centaur Publications. This issue went on sale October 17, 1939. The editor at Centaur was Joe Hardy, using his alias Uncle Joe. This issue features some stories reprinted from earlier Centaur comics. Phony Crimes is a 5-page story written and drawn by Paul Gustafson in this humor detective mystery strip. Wonderworld Comics, number 8, December 1939, published by Fox Comics. This issue went on sale October 25th, 1939. Features a classic cover by Lou Fine of the superhero The Flame. The editor at Fox was Victor Fox. The Flame appears in a 9-page story written by Will Eisner with art by Lou Fine and features the first appearance of the villain Von Kropt. This story would be reprinted in The Flame number 1 in 1940. Yarko the Great, Master of Magic is an 8-page story likely written by Will Eisner with art by Bob Powell in this early superhero comic strip featuring Yarko and Carla Dennis. The Terror is the title of the Shorty Shortcake 6-page story written and drawn by Jerry Iger. Tommy Taylor, the Great Boy Adventurer, is the title of a 2-page text story written by Jerry Iger with art by Powell. K-51 Spies at War is a 5-page story written by Will Eisner with art by Bob Powell, featuring the villains Remy Musoni and Sin 2 as the villains, and the story would be reprinted in Blue Beetle number 4 in 1940. The Train Robbers is the title of the 5-page Mob Buster Robinson strip drawn by George Tuska, featuring the first appearance and death of the villain Jerome Mulden.